hope you can hear me okay. So it's a great pleasure. And first, I would like to thank Rafal and the whole team for welcoming me here, and great to see all of you online and even see some familiar faces. So basically, what I'm gonna try to do today in this, first, I would like to tell you where I'm coming from in my approach to foresight, then to go and discuss a couple of pieces of foresight. Well, obviously we can discuss many more if or further during the conversation and discussion afterwards, but also to have a couple of concluding points on basically how to institutionalize approaches to foresight in organizations, be them corporate, be them public organizations, international organizations, and what you can do. And I'm very happy to answer then to any kind of discussion. Just a point, in the kind of work I'm presenting here, I work with many people, and I'm going to acknowledge a few explicitly, but obviously I would spend 20 minutes just acknowledging people if I would go into all the contributions and collaborators I had through the years, because I'm talking here about over 2 decades of work. So where I come from, basically I started with maths, physics, microelectronics, biomedical stuff. I did my PhD in artificial intelligence more than 25 years ago. And added layers of sociology, management, and political science after. And so basically today I would say I'm a kind of interdisciplinary scientist, quite a hybrid. And the first piece where I engaged, not yet with foresight, but was complexity and looking at complex adaptive systems. And that's an approach which I'm still carrying today in my approaches when I work, engage quite a lot with the Santa Fe Institute back then. Then I started engaging with foresight, and that was mainly via Oxford with, well, the Institute for Science, Innovation and Society, if I remember well, we called it, which was sitting at Said Business School, working with people you might know, and you also welcomed here, Angela Wilkinson. I did a lot of work with her, Rafael Ramirez, who is also a close colleague and friend. So that's the kind of work we've done. Then I moved or maybe integrating actually science and policy even more, and created something which I'm going to discuss a bit later, an initiative to cross science, policy, business interfaces, and then focusing quite a lot, and actually that's a big core of my work today, on climate change, environmental issues, tipping points, and via either large collaborative research projects like the Green Wind Plus and others, out of which there are a number of books and deliverables which are there. So I would say in a nutshell, I'm an interdisciplinary scientist working always at the kind of interface, and my goal is really to try to find solutions. Sustainability, but not only sustainability, I'm very much involved and interested in the social aspect, the justice, in all these dimensions. So if we go into more the foresight side of things, because this is what we are discussing here, well, because I was coming mostly from natural science and in engineering and technologies, first I engaged actually with a lot of foresight processes at the European Union around 25 plus years ago. There was something called the Future Emerging Technologies at the European Commission, with a lot of research, but beyond, did a lot of work on that. Then a lot of questions around what means to be human in a hyper-connected world. So it was quite a big initiative. We called it the On Life Manifesto back then. all the convergent things, nano, bio, info, cogno, with a lot of things, but also a lot of speculation, and people thinking that that's going to revolutionize everything, and then people getting completely disappointed and so on. So back and forth from all of this. Well, I was born in communist Romania, and I carry somehow this background too. So basically, I also engaged at some stages in my life with the kind of future in the Soviet Union and what that became in these post-socialist countries. And finally, quite a lot of the work, as I mentioned earlier, in the side business school with the INSIS. And well, one of the pieces after the financial crisis, that's something where both Rafael and Angela, we worked with some other colleagues and we developed scenarios beyond the financial crisis scenarios and so on. And more recently, I work a lot on the Foresight for about the Belt and Road Initiative, which is a gigantic piece about infrastructure, but also with lots of environmental and not only issues, and which comes with its challenges. And let's say the last kid in the block is the IPBES, which is Science Policy for People and Nature, basically. And we have a Nexus assessment, which is going to be released at the end of the year, and which has quite a lot of Foresight pieces in. So, as I said, I've chosen 3 pieces. One, this ISSP, Science, Society, Policy, Business, Even Art initiative, and how I use, and again, jointly with many people, Foresight there, something we've done with Angela Wilkinson for the World Business Council for Sustainable Development. And finally, work I have been contributing to the UNEP, which have been involving with UNEP in different capacities for probably almost 2 decades now. And I have basically selected 3 different pieces because they are in different types of coalitions and also territorialities. I didn't choose corporate project and others because I thought that, you know, what could be more interesting for maybe the OECD community here. So this initiative for Science, Society, and Policy, well, basically we tried to make science technology a more integral part of the societal planning and discourses. Obviously, everybody wants to do that. I mean, we started that in 2005-06. And also, this is where we started, and that was my AI-based background, to think a lot about what is science social responsibility and the scientist social responsibility, thinking exactly about the ethical aspects of the AI and not only, and all these, what we were calling back then, these convergent technologies. So basically, the way we started, we engaged quite a lot with, well, foresight processes, well, scenario planning, visioning exercises, a lot with architects, a lot of with synthetic biology people, with, you know, people who try to create life from scratch. We had a very interesting collaboration with the Louisiana Museum in Denmark, who really helped us a lot, convening, working, and we did work with a lot of the artists, which were basically presenting the museums. And Project Zero, I mean, now I know that everybody's talking about Project Zeros. Everybody has a target to go zero, but that was basically in 2007-08. And a community in Denmark, origin, 80,000 plus people on the border with Germany, had the idea to go zero. And that was, you know, back then there are not that many initiatives. The interesting thing also was that it was a business-driven initiative. It was a foundation, Danfoss Foundation, at the origin of this. Because we were running this initiative for science, society, and policy, we started discussing. And again, we did quite a lot of processes in terms of foresight, traditional process and other, but a lot of visioning. Again, the fact that we had Louisiana Museum, which is up there on the right, helped us quite a lot, because we basically moved in between the communities, which was there, territorially speaking, but also what we could do with the Louisiana, so road mapping, and we had a lot of engagement with very young people. I mean, from kindergarten to international baccalaureate, so something which we call bright green youth, which worked quite a lot. So you had all these conversations, and it was quite interesting to see how these Foresight pieces worked differently, or in some ways quite similar, depending on who was involved. Well, how it worked, what was also interesting, and from there we developed many other pieces of work, but as I said, it was started with a business initiative, but what was called DONG, and which became today Ørsted, which is one of the most successful companies in renewables, offshore, the #1 in offshore wind. Back then it was 100% fossil fuel. So I'm not saying that Ørsted went to zero fossil because of us, but it was a kind of coincidence and synchronicity in between the kind of processes. So they were quite involved in what we're doing. Maersk, the shipping company, also got on board because they also had plans. So you had convergence of these processes, and I have to say that we had Connie Hedegaard, who was the Minister of Environment in Denmark back then, and then she was the Commissioner for Environment in Brussels, which was very involved too. So basically we had all of these bits, and the fact that we had also, the museum, kids, communities, and I'm not saying everything worked, but we experimented a lot, and altogether it worked pretty well. And I would say even today, the community is actually still on the way. They didn't put for themselves a completely crazy target. They wanted back then to get to zero by 2029. And I think they are pretty much on track. Well, a second piece, which is more of a Foresight, doing Foresight, but with the World Business Council for Sustainable Development. Again, it's about the same time, 2009-ish. But what was interesting, it's on one thing was pieces of Foresight doing visioning, the Vision 2050, which actually is quite interesting. The WCSD revisited a couple of years ago, basically, and they keep these 9 billion people living well under the limit of the planet. But in the same time, with Angela Wilkinson, we also, and some people in the team, we also have a reflective practice. So we engage with all the members of the WBCSD, which were involved in the process. We did longitudinal studies. We interviewed the CEOs in free series of interviews at 1 year of distance. And we try to understand how the foresight is being done, what they call foresight, what they do when they do foresight. Do they do what they call they do? What kind of impact? Did it have any kind of impact? Because one of the questions again and again is saying, okay, we are doing foresight, but what's the effectiveness of such an interventions and so on? So, and we have a couple of publications which came out of that. So, I mean, we can discuss it more, but I wouldn't go very far into that. What was maybe interesting is that, okay, I'm good on time, sorry.
It's okay.
Is that this visioning process with the World Business Council for Sustainable Development came also at the time when World Business Council for Sustainable Development, they had some engagement. They developed scenarios, quite a number of scenarios, and they were kind of shifting a bit towards more visioning, backcasting, pathways, road mapping, and so on. So that was also, we tried also to understand, was it something which was a kind of explicit choice in terms of methods, or something which came along the process? And I think that's things it's always interesting to question and to understand why these things happen. And the last piece, it's basically the new foresight trajectory in which UNEP engaged quite recently. Basically, when we think about UNEP, they something many people know are the Global Environmental Outlook. That's the seventh is now being prepared. I have been involved with the GEO process since the GEO 3, which is a long time ago. So you have these long-term processes, very collaborative processes, trying to be policy relevant and not policy prescriptive, which is always a headache, engaging a lot in with lots of stakeholders. So it's a I worked previously also with the IPCC. It's a very different process, and I would say now I work a lot with the IPBES, which is on the biodiversity, and it's somewhere in between the GEO process and the IPCC in terms of process scientificity and also how much impact people try to get with it. So that's the long term, and also they issue things which are also kind of long term, like the 21 issues for the 21st century, which and then there are things which are what they call frontier issues, emerging issues. That's more annual things, and then you have also things which are briefing, etc., which is quite short term, but very distinct, very focused issues at some point. And UNEP engaged into a quite interesting, in my view, process, trying to develop deeper strategic foresight. So basically infuse this culture. Obviously, they know what foresight is. They have been doing all these pieces for quite a long time, but try to diffuse and also kind of bring home within the whole organization a kind of future-oriented culture and strategic foresight use altogether. And basically to also have more people, many more people within the UNEP teams which understand how foresight function, how they could use it, etc. Also try to design a process basically to see how they can, maximize impact, of course, and unite efforts instead of having little pieces here and there. I mean, little pieces and big pieces, because when you do a GEO, it's not quite a little piece. And basically also to see, well, all these tools are there, sets of tools, and basically, can you use what's out there? Should we as UNEP develop more in-house? Do you use, how much to use in-house? What's out there? They embarked also in this process in a collaboration with the ISC, the International Science Council, which also has a focus on and quite interesting things on foresight. And it came also at a time where basically you have, well, what we call the UN 2.0, which is basically trying to build and reform the UN basically processes. And although in 3 days, basically the Summit for the Future is going to start. And one of the pieces of these step changes, which are supposed to change UN, we'll see how much it's going to happen, is to use strategic foresight. So one of the pieces in this spirit of UNEP trying to bring strategic foresight more widely in-house was this report which got out 5-6 weeks ago, which is called Navigate New Horizons, which is feeding into the Summit of the Future. So, and with obviously public data, lots of data accessible, integrated, and the knowledge is it's openly shared. I think what's more interesting is to focus a bit maybe on the approach. So basically in this approach, starting like always, with framing, scoping, what we try to do, there is a piece of scenario development, which was happening, but in the same time, and some of the scenario work went into also the next steps, which a lot of data was gathered via Delphi process and, horizon scanning and signals, looking for weak signals. The Delphi went out. Quite a number of experts were involved, if I remember, 1,000 plus. lots of input, then interpreting this another round, and what is called the global sense making. Basically, UNEP and ISC put together something which is called the Foresight expert panel, which I'm part of, to try to understand and distill and basically walk along the process and make sense out of that. So we had a number of sense-making workshops through the process, and it went into this report, which is now out. And basically it came up with 8 critical shifts. I would say that's not particularly groundbreaking, because if you look at the mega trends, etc., that's something which you are gonna find coherent. I think it's a lot of interesting work behind the way the critical shifts were identified, and also with regional workshops around the UN regions. It was interesting to see how people participants in all these workshops, regional workshops, what were the sensitivity, the regional sensitivity when people work into that. But I would say what may be more interesting, people were asked, experts participating in the Delphi were asked to identify signals of change, so basically weak signals. In the end, 280 signals got identified. And out of that, 18 of the signals got like prioritized through a series of processes, which you can see here, from ancient microbes in the Arctic permafrost to uninsurable futures and so on. So I can come back to that. And for each of these signals of change, I mean, not the 280, but the ones which made it in a kind of the core group. The question was, again, to all the experts, what was in terms of what's the potential disruptions, what's the time frame, how the likelihood is estimated qualitatively by the experts, the intensity of the impact, and also the questions of, regionally speaking, where impact can happen. And this is something which is supposed to provide a toolkit, and something which the UNEP and other collaboration with ISC and others can basically provide tools, dashboards, signals of change to watch out, and so on. So basically, just to finish, well, is possible to establish an institutionalized approach to strategic foresight? I would say yes. But basically, the whole idea is how to embed foresight practices in the core functions of governance and the decision making. That's, I would say, the kind of core. But how you do it? Well, you're going to say a lot of things there, but still, I think for organizations and institutions, it's important to have a dedicated foresight unit. I mean, I helped a couple of organizations setting up this kind of unit, and that's basically in that way, my only job is to make myself redundant, actually, which when I tried, it worked, so I'm pretty happy with that. How to make it really embedded into the strategy cycles, into the policy cycles. If it stays on the side, it's not basically making too much of a difference. So basically, agenda setting, strategy formulation, design of policies, you have to have it there. I mean, not only foresight, obviously, and there are a lot of frictions, and probably we can discuss about that. But, and also, it shouldn't be one-time exercise. Basically, okay, we go for the next strategic cycle, okay, done, we bring this the foresight in, then we forget about it. So how to regularly review it, to update the new foresight analysis, what are the mechanisms via which, without redoing fully shaped processes, you bring it and you check along the way. combine Foresight methods. I would say don't fall in love with one method only. More I work, more I use multi-methods, combining methods. I'm not saying whatever works, but really you think reflexively but both quantitative and qualitative together, sometimes separately, how they can talk to each other, how they basically, are they synergetic, are they conflicting, how to think about that things. Well, multidisciplinarity, maybe, I'm saying that because I'm doing that, but I really think it works. Well, leadership buy-in, that's a no-brainer, of course, if you can't do it without. But I would say, also how gently to bring it into the organizational culture. So basically via training, but offer training, nothing, it should be exciting. It should not be compulsory. Maybe I know that some organization even put it in an incentive structure. I know that's a very, very sensitive thing. So maybe I would not say what you can do with that. Experiment. Let people experiment. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't matter. If you fail early and cheap, that's fine. You still learn quite a lot, and basically, we have tech, we have data, how we bring it in, but basically, how do you leverage it in a way that it doesn't replace foresight in-house and something? And feedback loops, basically, how do you enable mechanism where basically past decisions, but also current decisions are kind of looked at, evaluated, relooked, and trying to see how you bring the foresight inside. So thank you very much.